Moving on, our next guests are Jocelyn and Aron Freeman. Let me tell you kind of quickly about them. They're the authors of The New Power Couple, speakers and sought-after relationship coaches, and founders of the Empowered Couples University, an online university hosting higher education and personal development for motivated couples to learn the relationship skills to be a true team. They have shared the stage with Tony Robbins and Golden Gravel, Hall of Fame speaker. Jocelyn and Aron Freeman are currently writing their second book, and their vision is to make relationship development the new personal development to lower divorce rate in their lifetime. So from a personal standpoint, I will tell you that I've been to about every counselor on the face of the earth. You know, I was married before, and now I'm in a relationship with Tiffany, which has lasted a little over 5 years. I know for a fact that I still wouldn't be in that relationship with Tiffany if it wasn't for the people that are to my right. And they bring a different level of accountability, communication, dialogue, insight, awareness that I had not seen in all the places that I was searching for. And the problem with me in relationships is I just continue to bring me to every place that I went. And so they really helped me to see my blind spots and do it in such a way to where I didn't want to punch them. So with a warm summit welcome, help me welcome Aron and Jocelyn.
Hey, good to be with you as always. Thanks so much for having us.
Oh God, you guys have been a lifesaver and just an amazing couple in what you're doing within the community and within the work. Let's talk about how it's different. You know, what, people think about, couples and they're like, oh my God, why do they have a couples coach on here? I mean, are we in therapy session? What's really going on? But talk about the maintenance side of what needs to happen inside relationships.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something we're really passionate about because we had completely different upbringings together, what his parents were like in their relationship and what mine were. And what we find interesting, if you really think about it for a second, everything that you want to be great at, a sport, your career, any skill that you want to do, like a hobby, what would you do? You'd get training, hopefully, right? And what we thought was funny was people invest so much into finding a mate, dating apps, dating coaches, and then getting married. The average couple invests or spends $30,000 on a wedding. And what is odd is that people only wait to work on their relationship usually until they need counseling. And we just thought that was so odd considering the amount that people invest into education themselves, and people somehow think that you wait to learn things about relationship when something's going wrong. And what we're out to do is have it become so normal, so mainstream to proactively work on your relationship that people would go, you haven't been to a couples workshop yet? That's odd. Everyone's going, right? And so what we do is teach skills. We come from a place of nothing's wrong. In fact, behind every challenge is a missing skill in the relationship. And that's really what it's about. It's learning new skills, and money is a huge topic that couples need to talk about.
What do you think, Aron?
No, I totally agree with it. It's skill-based, right? And to get rid of this feeling of, oh, something is wrong, I don't want to talk about my relationship, we're not communicating well, but I'm not even going to tell my best friend, I'm not going to tell anybody. And all of a sudden you see these huge scenarios that are surprises to everyone. Oh my gosh, I looked up to that couple and now they're getting divorced? Like, how does that happen? It's because people feel like it's too much of a shame to talk about these things, but it's just learning the right skills. And money is one of these places that adds not only the taboo part about money, but on top of it, the relationship piece. So it's really difficult. It can become stressful, but it can really just be having a certain set of skills. All of a sudden, you're growing together, you're becoming stronger, you're communicating better, and you're using money more so for your purpose, not just to survive or have it be something else that just causes stress.
What resonated with me as you guys are sitting there talking, which I think is amazing, is how's your relationship? It's fine.
Right.
So Natalie really kind of challenged us, is your life fine or is your life amazing? And I love it what you said, Aron, is I think there's a stigma that if I got to call Aron and Jocelyn, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just want a better relationship. Speak to that and what you see in the couples that come to you early. There isn't anything wrong. They just want to further develop as a couple, whether it's communication or sexually or in whatever area, money and communications, versus you do see some people in crisis, and so kind of speak to that.
I mean, it all comes, and I'll have you answer as well, but it all comes down to what kind of person are you? Are you proactive in your life or reactive? And when we see couples be proactive about owning up to the fact that maybe you could use some extra communication skills, maybe you could use some conflict resolution skills, not from a place of feeling guilty or anything's wrong, but just taking that kind of ownership and responsibility, we see couples thrive so much more. And I love what you said, Walter. It's not about surviving in your relationship. Who wants to say, yeah, we stayed together for 40 years and we weren't happy for the last
we made
30.
it. We made it. Yeah, good job.
No.
We survived to the end.
And what's funny is people today, and quarantine is a little bit different than maybe what the rest of life really feels like. There's just different circumstances that couples are dealing with right now. But regardless, there's this mentality in life of being so busy. And what a lot of couples do is give the scraps of time to their partner. They're busy working, they're busy being parents, they're busy going on vacation, they're busy managing finances, tennis, all the things, and then what's left over for your partner? And we don't just mean date night. Date night is awesome, and believe us, we love a good golf session together, but it's like, when was your last relationship check-in? When was the last time you checked in and go, hey, how satisfied are you in each of the areas of our relationship? And I guess, anything else you'd add to it?
I think that's just a key thing. It's all about awareness, but a lot of times, Walter, like you were saying, how is your relationship? They say it was fine. Well, what's that based on? Your most recent mood, right? Like, okay, if you had an argument, what are you going to say? Oh, well, it's not going great. But when you break it down to say, well, it's not just a general sense of our relationship, but we have areas of our finances, our social life, family, our intimacy, our communication, and you start to break them down, now you actually have the awareness to put in the skills in the areas that you want to grow in. But it also helps too, because rather than saying, oh, we had a disagreement and a fight and it's not going well, go back and look and remember, you're actually doing great in your social life. You're doing great in your profession. You're doing great in all these other areas. It can reduce the significance of, let's say, an area of money, if that becomes challenging to remember, we're actually doing great in a lot of other areas too.
Talk about, because at the beginning of the program, I walked the participants through an assessment, kind of a competency to, what do you know? I've been through your personal assessment around, really where you're at. I'll tell you, when you asked me to do that, it was a scary thing, because I almost didn't want to know how bad I was. So speak into the fear of that level of resistance, just to the people that are there that are in relationships that are fine. And do you have a willingness to get out of the fine, and what steps need to happen? And I love the assessment.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. So what he's referring to, just for any of you who are wondering, there's a relationship assessment that we have couples take that has you actually get almost like a health assessment. If you went to the doctor and you're like, hey, let's go into all your systems, how you're doing. This is an assessment going into how much on the same page are you around intimacy, finances, communication, conflict resolution, etc. Now, it does take something to face it, right? But here's the thing, things can only improve if you acknowledge where you are. And whenever we talk to a couple and we show them their assessment results, we say, look, this is just baseline. This is just where you're starting. Now, everything is about how you can improve. And I think a big thing that I always offer to people is, don't take it personally. So many of us learned the wrong things in relationships. I mean, if any of you saw the most recent movie, maybe even type in the chat if you did see this, of The Marriage Story, which should have been called The Divorce Story. And if you saw how much they were withholding communication, they weren't having the tough conversations for years, and then all of a sudden she blindsides him and wants a divorce. And he's like, what? Like, I literally thought we were okay, and unfortunately, that might be okay on the micro level, like people can do that to each other for something small, like, oh, that really bothered me when you did that. But when couples are compounding that, withholding things year after year after year, And then blindsiding each other, that's not setting each other up for success. So by doing an assessment, just like you would about how you're doing in tennis, in golf, at your office, like don't you get an assessment of how you're doing in your career, or maybe you're the owner of your company? All of your employees have some way of measuring how they're doing, right? Same thing in your relationship. Anything you'd add?
Yeah, I mean, I love analogies. So I was thinking, go back to your health in this case. If you're scared to step on the scale doesn't care, you're still that weight. So what are you really afraid of? Because it's going that way. So if you're afraid of assessing your relationship, which is so necessary, the fact of the matter is it's going that way anyway. You can't avoid that. So it's better, no matter what your results turn out to be, it's better to actually know, because then you can do something about it. It's already there. You're either avoiding it. So why you might be scared is because, okay, yeah, reality might hit you, but otherwise you can't do anything about it. So in this case, it's getting awareness, and that's the thing to know. First of all, awareness is the first piece to grow in any area, so you're already improving just by knowing.
Talk to us about money. Couples and money. I mean, probably the single, we actually, right after you guys, I mean, I'm not morbid, but I just think it's just what is. So right after you guys is one of the nation's top family law experts. And so we bring you guys on before just to maybe never get there, maybe never have to call a family law expert. So what can people do, especially women, if the man is the breadwinner? I mean, I know that there's the dual household, there's the man, then there's the woman, and then the husband stays home and is more the caretaker. But I would think the vast majority is, especially in the affluent area, the man is the primary, breadwinner. So one, how do you improve the communication? Then two, if you're in an environment where you want to have better communication as the woman, how do you initiate that? How do you kind of tap on the shoulder and say, hey, honey, I want to become more involved. I know I haven't been, but how do I do that?
Yeah.
You mind if I share the first piece? From the male perspective, and Walter, I appreciate you having me on as I think the only speaker in the female day today. So from my perspective, what's going to work for me if Jocelyn brings this up? Well, first of all, what's not going to work is Jocelyn says, hey, I hate how our money is going. You've been dominating me. You don't let me experience joy or enthusiasm or enjoyment around money. That's already going to put me on the defensive. So the way the conversation needs to be approached is from the positive intent. What is your positive intent here of having this conversation? So if Jocelyn comes to me and says, hey, Aron, I really would feel great about, getting even more on the same page about finances and maybe earning and attracting more, actually seeing my role in bringing more into the family or just playing a role in this bigger vision, right? So she's sharing with me what the positive intent of the conversation is. Now I know the direction. I'm going to be more leaned into the conversation rather than on the defensive if she says, I hate how this is going.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. And I want to share kind of from two parts. Number one, so I'm actually a child of divorce. My parents went from being in love, and everyone said they envied their relationship. Oh, they're best friends. I want a relationship just like them. To all of a sudden, intense divorce, going to court, fighting over us, their children. Money was a huge part of it. Control, threats, all those things, right? So for me, I'm really passionate about, again, couples talking about things proactively, money being one of them. And like you said, Walter, people say that money is the number one reason for divorce. Yes, except it's really communication that's missing. Everything comes down to communication. So if you're struggling with money in your relationship, you're missing communication skills. If you're struggling in intimacy, you're missing communication skills, right? So communication is the vehicle for all of those areas of the relationship. And so if you're saying, I want to get more on the same page with my partner about money, it's, hey, let's learn communication skills. Like Aron talked about, what's the positive intent? And here's the thing, you've got to sit down in a calm conversation about money and not blindside each other. We call these drive-by conversations. So you don't want to just all of a sudden come home from work, open up the bills or open up your account on the phone and all of a sudden go, what are you doing with money? And we need to get on the same page. it's in a calm manner, what we call a family meeting, right? So sitting down, and since Walter asked about for the females specifically, although I would challenge what you're saying, Walter, in that I know a lot of powerhouse women who are becoming the breadwinners.
Hello, come on.
And I know many of them are watching this, and some of your colleagues. So I'd say whether it's the male or the female, it's coming down to number one, and this would probably take a little bit more time for us to go into, but it's what are you both fundamentally wanting with money? We call it, what's your meaning of money? Is it for one of you security? For another one of you, it's enjoyment. You've got to get down to like, what does money mean to each of you? And you don't have to change each other's meaning of money, but understand each other's, validate each other's, and then be able to come up with a plan, more like what you do with families, Walter, and that's say, let's take what matters to both of you with money and put that into more of financial actions that you would take.
Yeah, what's interesting about Aron and Jocelyn is part of their program, and I will tell my audience that I don't know how many speakers we're ultimately going to have over these 7 days, but I will tell you, every one of them has a willingness to offer their time for consultations in a limited fashion. So we're going to make all that available sort of at the end of the program, and just because nobody's paid, zero. I'm footing the bill for all of this out of my pocket because I just really believe in what here is our mission. But as in the beginning, I talked about run your portfolio like a business and have processes and structure in place, and yet in failed relationships on my own, none of that. It just was just ad hoc. I mean, if I was if my relationship was a business, it'd be no business. There was just nothing, no structure, no anything. And so Aron and Jocelyn and I've been to every counselor, I think, in the Western Hemisphere. I spent just gobs of money trying to figure it out. And so talk about your system, and as we kind of look to wrap up, and you talk about weekly meetings and some things that I really resisted but have been incredibly valuable.
Well, if you want to even share about the idea of running your relationship kind of like a business.
Yeah, it's one of the foundational things. You know, we were sitting down and we were actually starting our own business, 5 years ago for couples, and we realized this thing about the definition of partnership. Well, that makes sense for a business. You partner with somebody else. There's more than one person, and you come together. Two important things: with a shared vision, and you put things at risk. Right? In a business, you put your capital at risk, you put your time. But in a relationship, where is the common vision, for one? And by putting things at risk, well, you're putting your own personal finances at risk. But to us, that's the biggest thing. You're putting your heart at risk. You're putting your own identity, your ego at risk. And the biggest thing to be able to really create, get on the same page, better communication, have challenging conversations about money, is knowing what the vision is. Right? So Walter, like you said, you probably would have been fired, right, if your relationship was a business. Well, first of all, you need to set up what is the mission, what is the vision of the relationship. It's almost like I'm one person, Jocelyn is another, but we come together and our relationship serves our entity called our marriage. And what is the purpose of that marriage? It's bigger than both of us. Yeah. And so when we have challenging moments and conversations, we remember, hey, this isn't actually about us. It's about what our marriage is actually here for, and that's much bigger. And again, when you have a bigger vision, the same level of challenge or conversation can feel much smaller when you're like, oh yeah, we're actually here for the rest of our life to lower divorce rate. Yeah. Oh, so should we be arguing about, the $200 shoes or the dishwasher? Oh no, let's move past that. We're here for something much bigger.
Love that your theme on the business fits and incredibly, it's like a glove in what we're doing. Parting thoughts for those folks out there that are struggling. That our audience is, the affluent range is really amazing, and I think a lot of times, and I've seen it in the class, where people hide behind their money. Yeah. And they have a lot of money, they have a lot of things, and actually one of our speakers later on is going to talk about having just everything: big house, big car, big everything, and just empty. Yeah. And so maybe kind of conclude with that, and maybe how to get unstuck. You're kind of there, you're watching this. I get it. what's my next step?
Yeah, two things came to mind as parting thoughts. Number one, right now, whether you're watching this when it's live or going to be watching the recording, right now is the time. It's never too late to confront where you have roadblocks in your relationship. Now is the time. And why not face it and embrace it? Because if you go, oh, maybe it's the relationship that's the challenge, what do you take to the next one? Like you said, Walter, you. And so being able to confront it right now. And the other thing I would say is we've actually talked to couples. We went to Thailand a few years ago and talked to farmers that literally, like, they still live very much like shared land and just very simple lives. And we've also worked with celebrities. And no, whether it's the farmer living a very simple life or celebrities, same challenges. So your money does not compensate for whether you have the right relationship skills or not. So set aside the ego, set aside whether you think you should be good at it or your partner should be doing what you want just because you're successful, which I know if you're in Walter's orbit, you're obviously committed to success and having your life matter. So set aside any kind of ego of not wanting to put in the work into your relationship and take it on just like you would want to be great in your work, your parenting, your hobbies, and everything that you're up to.
Excellent. Well, I just sort of over the moon with you guys being here and sharing your message. And you, look, I tell you, right down to Aron and Jocelyn Freeman, there's major big stuff coming from them in the form of their book and other things. So thank you for being here, and we're going to take a quick little 2 or 3 minute pause, and we will have our next guest.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Walter.